this was going to happen, but man, Ukraine has been a doozy. I'm like, we've said some controversial shit over the last couple of years. I've never experienced the level of pushback than going against the Ukraine narrative. That is like number one, the most controversial topic I have ever seen discussed yet in politics.
That my favorite moment of the beginning of the Ukraine conflict was Candace Owens having a Twitter battle with the New York Times.
Oh, yes.
Where the New York Times says to Candace Owens, like, where are you getting your information from that they're corrupt in Ukraine?
Corruption, yeah.
And she goes, your newspaper? And then she puts all these different links that show all the different stories from as recently as 2017 that talked about the immense corruption in Ukraine. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? You're supposed to be the New York Times!
This is one of the primary ways that we've been gaslit in this conflict is like, and it just came out, I don't know if you saw this, you probably did, that Zelensky fired a bunch of his cabinet officials over corruption. And it was like they were taking these fancy vacations to Europe. One of them was accused of basically overcharging the military for meals. And remember, I mean, the amount that we have sent to Ukraine and propping up not only their military, but their government, their economy, et cetera, when they're taking that money, that's like coming directly out of the U.S. taxpayer pocket. And nobody reported on any of this until Zelensky fired people. And then we were allowed to be like, yeah, there's some problems with corruption there, maybe a little bit. Maybe we should like worry a little bit about where the weapons are going and what exactly is happening there. But before then, you weren't allowed to say it.
Even better, the Times actually changed its headline. They were like, Ukraine goes corruption drive. And it was like, Zelensky aims to stamp out corruption, just to make it a little bit less like the appearance. I have some fun numbers for everybody. This is from a past monologue I've done. U.S. aid currently at $100 billion is double what the entire rest of the world has given to Ukraine. In 1 year, surpasses what we gave the Afghan military in 20 years. The total amount to Ukraine now exceeds all U.S. military aid to the country of South Vietnam between 1956 and 1975.
Wow.
$100 billion.
And listen, I think what Russia did was wrong. I think it's an atrocity. I think the Ukrainian cause is just. But the total lack of debate, the lack of willingness to say, like, hey, when we got into this, what you sold to the American people was you were going to provide defensive weapons only so Ukraine could defend itself. Now we're sending tanks. Now we're sending, it just came out, longer range missiles. These were things that were totally off the table. And then suddenly, step by step by step, not only are they on the table, but you're not allowed to question it. You're not allowed to say, hey, guys, are we setting ourselves up for World War III here? Which is something the president himself was talking about not very long ago, and yet no debate. And that's the thing that, you know, however you feel about the Ukraine conflict and, you know, the build up to it and how we got here and all of those things, I think at the very base level, the total lack of an ability to have dissent and debate and understand the potential consequences of what we're doing, that is fucking terrifying, because we are talking about a nuclear armed superpower that we are engaged in a proxy war with, and you're basically not allowed to say, hey, how does this end? What do we need to do to try to get to a negotiated settlement here? How do we avoid having a conflict with this nuclear armed superpower? World War III seems like a bad thing to have on the table right now.
And you guys are one of the few voices of reason that will say that agree on both sides of the fence. Mm-hmm. And this is a thing that there's a lot of videos out now, and I don't know if these people get these videos, but I get them. I get these videos of horrible war encounters.
Yes.
In Russia and Ukraine. It's horrendous. And it brings me to this thing that I think about a lot, because I think about things that other people do for a living and their jobs, and I think about, like, they live in a world that I don't understand. You know, there's like I'm fascinated by professional chess players. They live in a world that I don't understand because I don't play chess. I love the fact I kind of know how the pieces move, but I've really only played like maybe 10 times my whole life.
Yeah.
There's a thing that people have. It's a quality of being a human being. You only know what you know. And other things become like these sort of like ethereal narratives. They're not necessarily real. And war is one of them.
Yes.
War is one of them. There's a thing that people, the way my friends who've served talk about war is so titanically different than the way people who ideologically support or disavow it. Like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about if you say there's no need for a military. You're crazy. We are going to get subjugated. Someone will come here with men with guns. If you take away all the guns that everybody has and no more military, we're fucked. And if you don't think that, it's because you've never gone to the dark parts of the world, or you've never gone on Telegram. I'll send you some videos. I saw a guy get killed with a hammer yesterday.
Jesus.
This is so important for people to understand, which is that we are 75 years removed from what war on the European continent actually looks like. And, Joe, I'm the same way. I've been on fucking Live Leak, since I was like 12, which is probably bad for you. But,
terrible for you.
Terrible for you. My girlfriend's like, what are you watching? I'm like, what? And she's like a beheading or something like that.
My wife, they come into my office and I have to pause videos. And I'm like, you really want to see this? You really
they always say
yes,
but then they can't handle it.
I can't handle it. I can't handle it.
Yeah,
I don't do well with blood.
The point, though, is that, we have to try and convey this to people and just say, like, hey, when you're on Twitter and you're like, hey, fuck you, anybody who's against an narrative, you're like, this is not a joke. Like, hundreds of thousands of Russians are dead. Hundreds of thousands are Ukrainians are dead. Millions are displaced. We have no idea what the end game is like. And, just what Krystal was saying, I have this thing where, the Fight Club line, like, on a long enough timeline. I mean, like, on a long enough timeline, Ukraine is getting everything that it wanted. So originally it was like, no-fly zone. And Biden was like, I'm being responsible. I'm saying no. Well, first they ruled out Patriot missile systems. Patriot missile systems are now on the way to Ukraine. They ruled out tanks. Now tanks are on the way to Ukraine. Right now, there's an article talking about how F-16s, they're thinking about sending Pentagon F-16s. Biden says no now.
Right, exactly.
We'll see.
But he was saying no to tanks.
Right.
Like 5 days before they sent tanks. So.
And here's the thing.
He doesn't remember that, though.
Yeah, you're right. And you gotta dig deep, too. Like, for example, originally we're like, we just want Ukraine to take back what it originally lost. And listen, if I was Ukrainian, I'd be pushing for the same thing.
Absolutely.
I have 100% sympathy. They are not in the wrong here. They've been invaded by a foreign and aggressive power. That said, like, we got to think about what's best for us. Right now, there's a New York Times article about U.S. warms to helping Ukraine take back Crimea. I'm like, well, hold on a fucking second. I'm not saying it's just that Russia took Crimea in 2013, but they formally annexed it. And if you ask people in Russia, Crimea is Russia. So if Ukraine uses a Pentagon-provided F-16 to bomb Crimea, now what? Like, now, that's a violation of Russian nuclear doctrine. They've updated their nuclear doctrine, by the way, to not even say it's defensive. They can say they can use it in any capacity that Vladimir Putin wants to.